Well, I'm Álvaro Catalán de Ocón. I have a design studio. I'm from Spain, from Madrid, industrial designer. And I have this, we have on one side the design studio under my name, Álvaro Catalán de Ocón. And then we've also got this other brand, which is our design editor, which manufactures some of the projects we do. So today we are going to talk about one of them, which is linked to textiles, which is not our specialty. We are industrial designers, but through this project we got into an investigation, a personal investigation of textiles, maybe from a different point of view. This is our team from ACdO, so this is the editor, the manufacturer, which we had to actually restructure the studio to give a response to that project, PetLamp, and then the ideas which comes from the studio, which I run personally, and then put the products into the market through the other brand. These are some of the products we do in the studio, and then these are the ones we make ourselves. So these are products which have a special personality, which makes them maybe closer to a poetic approach towards design, which maybe a normal manufacturer wouldn't do. So it's through our own means that we can get them into the market and allow people to have them and to use them at home. No? So this is our working space, how we kind of do all the whole process from the first idea, the sketch, then the little components, the engineering the components, and then doing the communication, presentation of the pieces into the shop, and then next to the next project. We do only one new product a year and one new pet lamp a year. So we like working on a very small quantity instead of many products, but with a little intensity. We like doing many little things, well, a few things, but very intensely. No? So that's our kind of attitude towards design, because we believe that there are already too many products in the market. So why another one? We have to really think why. I started showing my work, well, I studied in administration and economics in Madrid, and once I graduated there, I moved to Milan to do product design, and then into London, where I graduated in Central St. Martin's, doing industrial design. I started showing my work in Milan, which has been my main exposure in the Salon Satellite. It was a very special place at the time to show a work from a different perspective. And then I started showing my work in Rossana Orlandi, which is a gallery in Milan, who represents my work since then. PetLamp was a project which started in 2012. I was simply traveling in Colombia at the time, and with some friends which were taking part of a project to do with plastic waste in the Amazon River. They needed the perspective of a designer, of a product designer, in order to create consciousness around that problem, which was happening at that time, and what was already creating an international awareness. No? It was the time in which we were talking about the seventh continent, which was floating in the middle of the oceans. And it has to do also with countries where there is no infrastructure for recycling. So all the heavy rains, they wash all the rubbish into the river. And from the river, it's washed into the seas. And then it concentrates in these big islands. No? So it was creating a conscious, not trying to resolve the problem, which is probably way too big for us as designers to do, but just to communicate it, to show people that the problem exists, and also analyze the waste from a different perspective. We have these 4 pillars in the project. So it's the starting point, which is an ecological issue, which is going to be thought through a design process from a design methodology, but using local crafts instead of industry, and with a social background. So we were working with a group of artisans which are in a specific social, maybe social problems, you know, in those times. So we started the project in Colombia. well, the problem with the plastic bottle, specifically that it's a material, it's a product made out of a material which lasts forever, but the use is very short. So it's going to have a use of 10 minutes maybe. You drink a glass of water and then you throw a bottle which lasts for centuries. No? And then usually in these countries they are thrown into the wherever, which then is washed into the sea, through the rivers. We thought about combining this global problem, this global object, which is a plastic bottle, with a global crafts technique based on basket making. Basket making is actually the first craft which was developed by humans, which you can see here from prehistoric paintings to the Egyptians to Greeks. So it was combining these two realities, which you can find worldwide, in order to transform that object into another one. So it was, instead of recycling, reusing, and instead of using industry, using crafts, which is what we could find locally and in a very high quality. So our inspiration came from the tea whisk, from the Japanese ceremony of the tea. This is an object made of one material and one piece. No? So it's a bamboo, which is stripped, and then by weaving through it, it opens up and keeps the shape. No? So this is very similar to what happens in a bottle. In a plastic bottle, you have a knot here, as you have with the bamboo. You have a structural area, which you can hold, and then another larger area which you can intervene and you can cut. No? So then the craftsman cuts the bamboo into strips, as with the bottle, starts weaving, and changes the shape. And if you carry on weaving, it changes the shape and takes the personality of the local textile. So it's a product which keeps many layers of understanding of the object. On one side, you have the industrial stage of the object, which you have the plastic bottle, and there's this code here written in every bottle. So it's interesting how, if you can decode with a tracking number, it gives you all the information about that product. No? It tells you where the product was made, which was the market where it was going to be offered, on what time it was made, for which company, and so on. And then you have also another information from this side, which talks to you about that second stage of the object. No? It has all its cosmogony written in that textile, which was made in this case in a fiber called paja de tetera, which comes from a palm tree in the Cauca region in Colombia, and was used by a Eperara sapidara weaver to draw this drawing here, which is a spider, a pre-Columbine spider. No? So we did a workshop there for over a month, and we got together a group of artisans which were displaced by the guerrilla war in Bogota. So our idea is to spend a long time with the craftsman, to slowly build up a connection and a way of working, a way of understanding the project, and then between all of us create this new product, which no one knows really if it's possible until we get our hands and get it done. No? So we started in Colombia, working from Spain, from Madrid, which is where we have our main studio. We started in Colombia, then we moved to Chile. Later we did it in Ethiopia, Japan, and this year Australia. So this year we completed actually the 5 continents, which has been quite outstanding. No, it was we took the project as a very globalized project, and this year we managed to kind of put one flag in every continent, which was quite surprising. So we did also a big effort to communicate the project in the right media. This was the first time we published the project. We did it in Domus, which we consider is the best design magazine in the world. And this mainly to position this project actually as a project and not as a product. No? So show it that it has been developed through a methodology based on design principles and not just kind of doing a hippie craft. No? And then also to give it a continuity. For us, it's essential that this is not just a project which is going to be made, published, and then leave these weavers with an expectation which is not fulfilled. No? So we actually take a great interest in carry on with every time we do a new workshop, we carry on with the production, going as much as the demand of the product. Then we move it around worldwide. We've done it in Rossana Orlandi, for example, which is where we presented first time, VitraHaus in Basel, the Salon Satellite Milan, Trans Design in Shanghai, 2121 in Tokyo, Sibon in Tokyo, NGV, which is now on show in Australia, Spence and Lyra, BAUHAUS, which is on show now in Weimar, in the original, in the Dessau building, in Vinson, which is this exhibition here, Helsinki Design Week with Kari Korman, Piteneik, and then, well, Holland, New York, Washington, and so on. These are some of the exhibitions. This is the VitraHaus, 2121 in Tokyo with ICO, the Bauhaus, and Shanghai. And then we got several prizes. It's interesting how also it's been noticed by different perspective around the product. Now, this prize was given by the King of Spain, for example, because of the value of the social background of the project, while the other one was given by the ecological aspects of the project, or this one is by the Design Museum in London as a product for the design value. So we arrived to Colombia without really knowing how the project would take shape. And we started working with artisans which are from this area here, the Cauca region, which is the most endangered by the guerrilla war, and they are displaced in Bogota. Colombia is a very specific country because it has a lot of influences coming both from the Pacific Ocean, from the Atlantic, from the African culture, Spain with the colonials, the US, the Asia through the Pacific. Then you have the Andes, which divides the country into, you have the Amazon. So this makes very distinct every area of the country, which is then a translation, is translated in the music, in the crafts, in the arts, which is kept very distinct. We started with this material, which is from a palm tree, paja de tetera, which then they strip, they tint, and then we combine with a plastic bottle. At the same time, we do these molds in wood, according to the sizes of the boxes of the local transport agencies, so we can facilitate the logistics after the project has started. And then we give complete freedom to the craftsman to give any color or pattern they feel like. So that's their culture, that's their language, and we don't want to intervene in that. But we then work on the shapes, on the logistics, on the methodology. For example, we create a system to very basically center the bottle to the mold, or a way of cutting the bottle in stripes, using very basic tools, very easy to understand and very easy to apply by any artisan worldwide. And little by little, we start developing the product with these amazing hands, which we always portrait, until we arrive to the final products, which are usually presented by the artisans themselves. They, for example, they work. They live in the Andes, in the mountains, so they work with wool, and they actually nearly portrait themselves in their lamps. She has the blue coat with the line here, the color, which is really part of herself, her lamp. And here, for example, she's wearing the same thing, and they go on. So it's fantastic how actually part of the success of the project is how the artisan is reflected in the work he does, and also the capacity of adapting to every different methodology. So this is then the product. We come up with a collection of products, so we can have a catalog of them, which we can sell individually or in groups. And then next year we moved to Chile. We said, well, let's try. It has been a success. Let's see if we can actually apply these principles into another country with different materials, with different craftsmen, and see what happens. We went to Chile, to an area which is a bit south Santiago, to Chimbarongo, And there they worked with wicker, which comes from this plant. We could see the whole process of how it's harvested, how it's dried to the sun, how they then cut it in strips, and we start weaving with it. In this case, these are professional artisans. The artisans from Colombia, they work as a social way of getting together. And it's like in Italy, the best cook are the mamas, no? The mothers. In the Eperara Sapidara culture, they all weave nearly professionally, but they don't live from it. No? So here we could actually try to achieve more complex shapes, more complicated engineering of the piece. And also we could grow away from the bottle because it's a very structural fiber, so we could have the bottle up to here and then make the lamp much bigger. But always the connection between the electrical components and the lampshade is made by the bottle because it's a perfect match. No? You have a transparent material which has no shades, which doesn't create any shadows. It has a perfect attachment with the screw of the top. And then these are the artisans which we work there with, the initial ones. Then slowly you get more and more coming into the project. And this is the collection. Then next year we moved to Africa. We went to Ethiopia. And there we meet a group of mothers of twins. So we started working with these 6 weavers. Fantastic. We were actually achieving a new way of weaving, which is based on coiling instead of pleating, which is the one we were using before. So it was actually trying to see how flexible we could get the project and keep it going using even other different techniques, no? Which we haven't tried before. We are not textile designers, so it was, and we don't want to learn when we go there about the technique. We want to observe, to see, and then give maybe crazy ideas which a weaver wouldn't come up with because we come from a different perspective. So that's our idea. Addis Abeba in Ethiopia is a hub as well in Africa at the moment, a hub of many cultures coming from all over. And it was highly interesting as well, culturally. We started working with them, finding the new way to bond the bottle into the weaving, which is screwing it in a way onto the weaving. And slowly building these other lamps, which actually are inspired by the injera plates. The injera is the way they eat, which is like a big pancake, which they put pieces of different food on it, and they take the pancake and eat it directly from there, and it's served on a big plate like this. Once again, we don't influence the weavers on which drawings or which colors to use. We let them go. And that was actually one of the most interesting things as a designer, no? To let go of the final look of an object. Designers are obsessed with the millimeter, with having things exactly the way you want. But this time we receive boxes which we don't know how they look, no? But it's a product which relates to us as much as to the weaver. So that way, the weaver is proud of his product, and once he's finished his first lamp, she's already thinking on the next one and the next one and the next one. No? So it makes it also very special because it's every lamp is different. So you don't have 2 same lamps ever, and the client takes home a serialized, unique object, which is very interesting. No? So it's a whole world, of iconic colors and patterns. Next year we moved to Japan. We're trying to get close to the culture of where the project came from, which was from the bamboo tea whisk. I went to Kyoto. And in Kyoto we met this artisan, Chemi, who works under another artisan. It's not passing. So in Japan, we worked with Chemi, who works under this other master, we found ourselves with the problems of the hierarchy in Japan. No? So you have the master, and then you have the pupils, and you can only access the master through its represented, by whom he is represented. So it was very hard to work directly with the person who was going to work hand by hand with the product. So we gave even more freedom to the artisan, because he also works in a very independent way, especially in Kyoto, where he works on his own in his workshop. He doesn't even have other people working maybe on the materials while he then works on the shape or something. So, so we slowly developed another way of doing by allowing them a big freedom to make very unique pieces. In this case also we told them to put the bottle inwards instead of outwards. So you don't have the bottle here, so it keeps the product more minimal and more discreet. The bottles are uncolored, the bamboo has no color, so so it keeps it more honest and more simple. And then we moved to Chile, back to Chile with the Mapuches. The Mapuches are the indigenous people from Chile, which are in between Chile and Argentina. In this case, this woman, they wrote us an email from Chile with a picture of a lamp they copied from our collection in Ethiopia, because they use the same technique, which is that coiling technique, no? And very similar materials as well. So we said, well, that's fantastic. We didn't even recognize the copy. We thought, wow, I didn't know that lamp was sold in Chile to a Mapuche woman. And we said, well, it's fantastic, but why don't we work on doing a collection which actually talks about you and not about an African weaver? No? So we started developing the project here in a place called Huentelolen. And slowly we got into the materials they use. They use ñocha, which is this plant, which they dry, and they cut in stripes, and they start weaving. We do basic molds. We change the shape of the product. And then they have the particularity, which in Ethiopia they don't, is of leaving these gaps. No? So there's more air in between each of the ellipses, no, they make. So we wanted to potentialize that. And then also Chile is a much more humble country, and they use very humble colors, no? Very dull colors, very discreet, very elegant at the same time. So they make these big lamps. Which are already distinct to Ethiopia, and they talk about the artisans who made them. No? And then we moved to Australia. So this year we did it in Australia. We got called by the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne, and for the first time we had a commission. So we had some more extra money. We've always financed our project through our sales, which makes it in a way very honest, but difficult at the same time. So this time we could go kind of wild as possible. So we decided to look for the most extreme area in Australia to work with. You know, find the weavers which develop their most honest and ancestral way of weaving. And we got sponsored by Vicky Vidor and Peter Avery. And we analyzed the country. We kind of investigated the different places where we could do it. And we found a community here in Ramingining, which worked with this kind of weaving, no? Which they left these areas free after they finished the piece. And we thought that was especially interesting. And it's a double way of weaving in two directions. And we investigated different centers of this weaving which use this weaving technique in the Aram land area, which is the most, it's run by the Aborigines still, no? And you have to have a special permission to get there, and you have to work with a art center. And this is in this place here. So this is Darwin, Melbourne, Sydney. We flew into Darwin, and then we drove from Darwin with a car during 3 days until Ramingining with food, water, and petrol for a month. And once we got the commission with the museum, we started seeing all the paintings, the collections they have there. And it was shocking. It was really shocking. The Aborigines, it's the oldest culture in the world. It has over 60,000 years, which is a lot. I mean, when you talk about prehistory, we talk about 12,000 years or something like that. So it's a very, very old culture which has kept very, very uniquely constant all along that time. They haven't got writing, so they transmit everything through dreams. They transmit everything through songs, through dances, and through drawings. They paint on their bodies and they paint on the floor, and then they dance on top of it so that the message disappears, but it's brought up to the different generations. At a certain point in the 70s, they were given some canvases and some paint, and they started doing this, which is extremely surprising. And we saw it. These are a selection of them, but we saw them. We selected the ones which were closer to weavings. It seems like these are painted woven pieces. So we wanted to get inspired by these paintings and kind of also bring them back and take them back to the weaving, to that weaving aspect that they show. But all of this has enormous meanings in their language. For example, this drawing here means a man. So probably this is a meeting of people, This is a water hole with a path which takes you there, such as here, which are interlinked by each other. So these are all stories. They are very linked to the land. They are like imaginary, well, and not so imaginary. They are quite real maps of their land as well. And we started to look at the actual territory, of Australia. We thought that maybe the piece would be interesting if it reflected where it was done in some way, because it was also going to be not so much of a commercial piece, but of an installation, which was going to be part of the collection of the museum and shown in the triennial, which is going to be open in 2 weeks. So we thought, why don't we look at the country and let's look at these satellite views, which show these concentrations of people along the coast, which is apparently where the people are concentrated in a country. We thought, what happens if we put the bottle here and we start weaving out from this concentration? And the weaving actually is a representation of the locals, which are weaving these pieces, and there's no bottle. Here you have more a mix of indigenous culture with Western culture. But then we started looking at other satellite images, and we came up with this one, which shows as much light happening here than here. And then reading, we realized that these are actually the indigenous fires, which are keeping the bush under control. Indigenous, Aborigines people, they have absolute control of the land, and they are feel very close to fire as well. So we started saying, well, certainly there's one same country understood in two different ways, and they don't seem to match, in a way. We started creating these points of connection between different areas of the countries, how they could interact, how they could link, and we moved into the community. We went there for over a month, 1 month and a half, going through these amazing landscapes until we get to the art center, which is where we worked with. And this is the Terminal 1 of the airport of Ramengening. So welcome to Ramengening. We get there. You already see how close they are with painting. It's a language. And we get involved as much as possible with the community. Here we are cutting bottles while she's looking at my head, if I got some. Or we hunt, we go hunting and we eat what we hunt. Or here, for example, took my daughter to the second stage of the project, and we're eating a snake, which they brought together with the fibers which they took in the country. And we go out fishing and hunting crabs, which we then cook on a fire on the beach. You couldn't do this if you don't go with them, you'd better not get close to the beach or to any water hole or anything. Don't move out from the house in Australia. But she's actually Mary. Mary adopted me to integrate me into their culture. And luckily, Mary is a crocodile hunter. So we were safe with her, walking around the country. Then we get involved with the children, with there's always a big, when you work with weavers, there's always a very generational aspect to it, no? So it's very interesting how you have the grandmother, the mother, the grandson, and you have all of this mix of generations going on. And we started also getting involved in their weaving techniques, their materials. We go out to the country, to the bush, to pick pandanas, which are these leaves which she's carrying. No, and we get the last 3-4 leaves which grow, which are fresh, and we put them down with a stick, which is, she's taking a stick from up there, from 4 meters high, no? Which they then peel. They take away the spiky areas which are on the edges by cutting it with a nail. They have actually, their hands are shaped to work with this material. It's incredible, no? And then they peel it in two, and you get 2 fibers which you can actually weave with. And then we get the colors, which come also from the bush. This, for example, is a leaf which makes a purple. Or this is the yellow, which is a root which comes from a different bush. And then you peel the bark of the of the root, and you powder it. And then from this one comes a red. And you have this kind of chemistry lab here to get the colors, which then you boil with the fibers. You let them dry at the sun, and you get this incredible palette of colors which come directly from the country. No? So at the same time as these materials and colors, we also get the bottles, which unfortunately, they are all worldwide. Even there you get bottles, no? So that's interesting as well, because when you get to these communities, you see rubbish everywhere. It's really sad. And I started investigating a bit, and you realize that in indigenous communities, there isn't even the word rubbish. It doesn't exist in their language. So what they use instead of rubbish is something which is out of place. So when they have like some dust in the inside of the house, they don't see it like rubbish. They say this shouldn't be here. It should be there. It's just in the wrong place. No? But of course, they are maybe eating a fruit. They just throw the fruit, and it will find its own place in nature again. It will go back to nature. It will be taken by another animal, or it will be. It will not disturb the surroundings. No? But instead, when they drink a bottle, they do the same. They drink the water bottle and they throw it 3 meters away, but it stays there forever. No? So in a way, we try to relocate that in their culture, in a way, we try to look a place for it in their way of doing, which is through combining it with their work, and we also ship it out of the place. No, we ship it out of the community. So then we show them our methodology. We took the newspaper, we edit every year, and they were discussing. Incredibly, they could read how every piece was done. It was amazing, the understanding of weaving they have. And then they start cutting the bottle, understanding how we would like to do it. Then they start combining the bottle with their weaving. And we ask them to, each one of them, do one single lamp. No? So they started putting the bottle here, up to here, and then they start weaving and weaving and weaving, using their traditional technique, which they apply on mats. So each one came with one, except for Mary, who actually came with 2. So we were quite, we were surprised. We asked, and they said that Mary is actually a twin. So she says that she does everything twice. So we said, well, that's really interesting. Let's take the extra the extra fibers you have here, and let's create a bond between your 2 lamps. So you can weave around them and end up having a lamp which is actually a double lamp and represents you better than just a single lamp. No? And she's actually twin of David Kilpilil, who's the most important actor in the Aborigines communities. He was, for example, in Crocodile Dundee, no? And many other films. So in a way, this one represents David and that one Mary, you know, which was very, very interesting. And we started saying, well, started thinking about, there was always something weird about the relationships. You know, you would ask a girl, how old are you? And she would say, well, maybe 8. You know, and it was like, well, what do you mean maybe 8? And you are like, and she was being told grandmother by someone who was maybe 60, you know? So there's this mix of time and different family links which are created around the Aborigines communities. And from on one side you have the blood link, which is like we have, the mother, the son, the grandmother. But then also there's the skin link, for example. It's a family skin link, which is more linked to the land, to the area from which they come from, as well as, for example, the language is another family link. And the language actually creates the frontiers in the Aborigines communities. So when you walk around the country, when you cannot communicate with the people you find, that is your border, in a way. And then also they have another link which is based with an animal that they relate to, which is the totem. And that's another way of linking family-wise. For example, they cannot marry someone who has their same totem. No? And this is something which we only get to very, 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 very surface of all of this. No? It's very, very hard to understand all of these family bonds, all of this culture around the Aborigines community, which they keep very protected. Yeah, but it was amazing then. We found, for example, this piece which was made in Ramingining as well, and it's a family tree. It's an Aboriginal family tree where you have the different origins of the family here, which are actually combining, which they mix around here. Maybe they have different children, different wives, no? And this actually represents a family, an Aborigines family. So we started analyzing all of these links between all of the weavers we were working with, which were 8 weavers. And we had like Betty, Judith, Mary, which belong to the same area, which are grandmothers, sisters, but they have the same totem. So it was like, we're trying to put things together, no? And we said, well, let's put all of the lamps and position them according to the family links of the weavers. So we started to work in a community all together, creating these links in between the family, in between the individual pieces. No? So according to different colors, you have different kind of links, different ways of interweaving between them. Like here, no, you start weaving around the intersections of the circles. And little by little, we were tidying up these millions of fibers here, which were leftovers, no? And this was how it started, and this was how it finished, no? So we did 2 pieces. This was the first one. And they feel really, really attached to it. They feel really part of it, and they belong to this piece. And it's a story about them, which is going to be shown in Melbourne. So then we start seeing that actually there's a connection between the paintings, which are like weavings, these circles, which actually bond all the pieces together. It's not already individual pieces, but they are bonded together. It's all one same piece, linked also with the topographic lines of a map. You know? And these circles, which are connected in their paintings, which are probably water wells, or which you can see here, and then you can see in pictures seen from above, or the billabongs, no, or rivers, which can kind of be written here, or actually here in their paintings. No? This was the whole team and the weavers. So this was the first piece we did, and the way they relate. No? So for example, here, this area is the area of the Billabong, and this is the area of the town of Ramingining. So they are actually linked by skin bonds. Mary and Yvonne are sisters, and they share the same totem, which is the color, such as them. And Cicely and Melinda are the daughters of Julie. And Cicely and Melinda, they have the same bond as well through the totem. No? So we kind of get to have a relation, a reading relation of this piece through a family bond. Then we did a second one, which is the one which is going to stay in Melbourne. And in this case, we worked with nine weavers, and now we have actually 10 pieces because Mary did her twin piece to put next to it of his brother. And the same way we have a different setting where we have now here the Billabong weavers with Judith, Lynette, Betty, Melinda, and Cicely, the daughters of Julie, Yvonne, Mary, and second Mary with the same totem and sisters. And then we had to find a way of having it floating in the air flat, as subtle as possible. So it wasn't too heavy, there wasn't so much presence. So we tried also to do it through thin threads of steel, which you could nearly like sew onto the piece, which you could embroidery onto the piece. And the piece was actually held by very thin cables, which were also the electrical poles. So here you have the positive pole, the negative pole, and an isolator here. So you get the electricity coming from here, and it spreads along the whole lamp, taking the electricity to the lamps, which then fall from the inside of the bottle through these two cables, which are not cables, actually, they are threads, electrical threads. And you would get the electricity flowing through the piece. And then you would have the light bulbs falling according to the diameter of the lamp. So you have this movement of light bulbs according to what they have to light up on the top. And you get these reflections of on the ceiling, which is a different reading of what's happening here in a way. So this is how it looks from below. So you hardly see any connections, any cabling, it's just like a floating textile on the air. And that's it. That was the story.